Well. Welcome back to Krown's Crypto Cave, and holy fucking moly, we have something new to look at today, at least as far as the short and medium term time frames ranges go, which I'm very much happy about, as Bitcoin actually taking a leg up to the 9,800-ish region in the early morning hours, at least for myself in the Eastern Hemisphere over here. So I want to follow up on that, and then also follow up on what we're seeing here on the Krown trading application, which can be found at app.krowntrade.net. It's 100% free. We have added even more things to it this past weekend, and we're going to be adding even more things to it over the next coming months. So keep an eye out for that. And I want to put the interest back on the open interest right here. We do see that it has taken that leg up. Another 100 million in open interest has been added as Bitcoin does take out the short-term and medium-term triggers to the upside. And that really does help kind of confirm the next sort of change behavior, perhaps a little bit more preeminently than price action will give us. However, as far as the high-term time frame ranges go, they are still more or less the same. The same knowledge essentially applies there. But because the short and medium-term time frames have changed around and confirmed a change of behavior there, to be fair, it's actually really leading up for a nice domino of events, if you want to call it that, as far as the higher term timeframes go within the Bitcoin landscape. So I certainly want to cover that. Also want to talk about traditional markets as well, of which I'm still looking good there. And what else do I want to say? Yes, for anyone interested, if you're interested in gaming, I do have a gaming channel now available here on YouTube. If you especially like like strategy games like Total War, then definitely check it out. It's at Total Krown. I'll have a link in the comment section below. Don't feel obligated to join if that's not you, if that's not for you. It's all good, man. I'm not gonna be mad or anything like that. But if that is you, then hell yeah, let's hang out there, because I could use more friends over there, and I've been really enjoying it recently, especially in the more slow times for Bitcoin. Anyways, let's go into actual Bitcoin charts right on over here. Let's go over to a daily, or actually, we don't even really need to go over with a daily just yet, but might as well start over here. Okay, so yesterday we spoke about this on, now let's go down to the 4 hour. All right, so yesterday we spoke about this on the 4 hour, that as long as the 4 hour was between the 200 exponential moving average and between the 200 moving average, more or less nothing's really happening of interest. And the earliest indication of a short-term move emerging from this would have been a break a break above or below either the 200 exponential moving average to the downside right here at 93.50, or a break to the upside right here of the 200 simple at about 94.20-ish region. Great number as well. And what happened relatively soon after the morning's video yesterday? Well, we actually broke above the 200 simple, which initiated the next target up to the last prior high that we saw on 15th of June, or 14th of June, 15th of June, right around 9,600. Then we said the key critical ingredient to the short term and medium term, because they're actually kind of like one and the same right here, because the ranges are so fucking tight, is that if Bitcoin takes out this last prior high at on like a tick basis, I believe it was like 95, 90-ish region, then we'd be looking for an extension to the top side of the range, somewhere around 9,900-ish region, give or take a few bucks, of which I believe that we've gotten that move pretty damn well right here, as Bitcoin spikes up to almost 9,800 on the dot, a little bit lower than what I was looking for yesterday. But overall, the same sort of knowledge applies, and I actually do think that this is going to get another try to the upside here after a short-term pullback. But because we have some very well-defined pivots that have been acting well, I guess is the right way to put that. We can apply the same sort of relevance to that same 9,600-ish region that we saw broken yesterday, or actually, if you want to be super accurate with it, on a 4 hour closure, it would be 95.75 right here. As long as Bitcoin's above there on a 4 hour total closing basis, it is still looking like Bitcoin will likely get another test back up into the blue box region in the $9,900 to $10,000 region right here, which makes it look overall very, very nicely, and really starts to mark this off as an ascending triangle that is almost near completion. In fact, as you do see from a volume not volume profile, but just regular volume standpoint, we are getting very mature within this formation, and if it is going to act as an ascending triangle, which would imply a bullish resolution on this, as it's more statistically likely, but statistics can obviously, they're not going to work out every time, but typically we do see triangles work out in Bitcoin's favors, where they're traditionally aligned with as far as statistics go, in this case to the upside. We do see that the volume signature on this as well is very, 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 very mature. In fact, coming into the area where statistically, again, it becomes incredibly likely to break. Anytime that you get between like 70 to 85% full within this with regards to, where you started from to the apex of the volume signature is usually where you're going to break it. Same thing on the actual charts themselves, of which you can see this would actually be a little bit lesser interesting coming into early July, it looks like, as a likely break. But from both of these perspectives, I would say that the volume is going to be getting it more right. It's more orderly, and that is going to offer up a better edge right there. And so that would suggest that we probably are going to be looking for a break of this triangle, whether you're bullish or bearish, probably in the next few days, realistically. Seen as, somewhere around 25, 26 is when it becomes extremely statistically likely. So again, doesn't mean that it's destined to do it, but if we're going off statistics, well, that's what I'd be looking at. And if you are playing options and buying volatility, as I've been doing for the last few days, that's kind of where I've been positioning my premium towards. So I am still long volatility. I'm still a little bit long in deltas, but more or less closer to the neutral side. I did close a lot of my position yesterday after Bitcoin did head back up to the upper 9,000s region. Anyways, going back down into those lower term time frames, what I can say now is that as long as Bitcoin is again above 95, 75, I do still look at this with a slight bullish tint in the short and medium term time frames. But as far as the high and macro term time frames go, or sorry, not even the macro term time frames, because we're nowhere near those levels, but the high term time frame ranges go, it's still the same thing as we've been saying for the last I guess month and a half, 2 months now. 9,900 needs to be broken at the very least on a 4-hour total closure, preferably 10,000 for the more conservative traders out there, of which I think 9,900 probably does do it. If that does happen, I would consider the ascending triangle resolve to the upside, and that would initiate a measure move all the way up here towards actually a little bit north of 11,000. Which would obviously include and imply a higher high above this last February trading high in 2020, which would actually have the domino of effect of making this now not into a long-term downtrend. We'd actually have our first higher high on a weekly confirmed, and the weekly would look very, very good here from a major moving average perspective as well. Just kind of outlaying that one. And realistically, as long as if Bitcoin can break that to the upside, I wouldn't just look for extension to the measure move at about 11,000 or 11,100. I'd really look for extension to the last major macro area overall. Now, of course, that's not to say that in the short and medium term timeframes we're going to see pullbacks from relevant areas like the 10,500 region, like the 11,000 or the low 11,000 region. But realistically, I would be looking for the move to come to a more meaningful consolidation and probably tail off a bit if and when Bitcoin does get to 11,500, assuming that it even breaks to the top side of this resistance in the first place. So we're making a lot of assumptions here. Understand that I need to be very, 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 very careful and clever with my wording, because if I'm not, then it can get misinterpreted. And while you can't really control the way that people interpret you anyways, because it's fucking impossible. I want to do my best job here, because I don't want to be seen as one of the people who's just like always blindly saying Bitcoin to the fucking moon or Bitcoin to the fucking doom. It's the same disease. It's the same fucking mind disease. And from a macro perspective, you can very easily see here that above 10,500, not only do we get a higher high on the weekly, but also from a volume profile perspective, we're entering into a change of behavior from that perspective as well. You can see it really tails off above this level, which suggests that the next major level that we have, relatively speaking, although wouldn't be relative to what we're seeing down here, or even where we are right now, is the 11,500-ish region right here, as that's when things just absolutely fall off the face of the fucking earth. And you can also see that, this is the same area that Bitcoin's been getting rejected at ever since January 2018. And then again in February 2018, twice actually. Then again for a fourth time in July 2019. Then a fifth time in August 2019 right here. All the same areas, 11,500. And guess what? If you look for confluence on CMEs, that is actually one of the gaps present on CMEs coming in from that August 2019 area right here. So overall, if Bitcoin does break back above there, that's when the macro really starts to come into effect. And that's when, I just generally get super fucking bullish for, moves to 14,000, 16,000, 20,000 are all going to be areas of interest. But realistically, I'm just overall not really interested in shorts. Doesn't mean that you can't make money on shorts. Just I'd rather make things easier for myself and play the long term. As far as CMEs go, they look a lot more orderly here, as we do see that CME is printing a very obvious ascending triangle as well. In fact, looking a lot better than spot price action, and the same levels here apply too. As long as Bitcoin is on a daily closing basis above 95.50ish region essentially, or wherever the 10 simple is coming around, or if you want to be even more conservative than that, the 21, although I don't think that that would be the right thing to do in this situation. I do think being more aggressive would actually be the more right thing to be doing. The interpretation of this is still a bias to the upside, as it's still acting as an ascending triangle, still maintaining the higher lows and actually the higher highs as well. So we do have an uptrend. So we have an uptrend plus major moving averages plus momentum oscillators as well, of which we are going to see the daily Stokes cross the upside and reject the bearish control zone here. So all that looks well and good for, a test to the tops of the range. In this case, that would be around 9,900 to 10,000. It does not imply a break to it, but statistically speaking, if we're adding up all the things in the bullish side of the of the case versus the bearish side, I'd say that the bulls still have the edge here. And keep in mind that we are actually getting to the end of June now. There's about a week left in the spot trading, and about maybe like five to 6 days left in CME trading for the month. And this is how Bitcoin's starting to shape up right now. We are going to see the monthly Stokes very likely lift off and confirm, or it's already confirmed, I'd say, unless if like Bitcoin has a $2,000 dump from this price point, but very likely, continue on with this rejection of the bearish control zone and let these monthly Stokes continue back upwards and onwards, which from a price point perspective, all Bitcoin has to do from here is just close above 89.50 to maintain that. From an RSI perspective, still above the exponential on this, and as you can see right here, we will remain above the exponential as long as Bitcoin's closing above about the same area as well, a little bit lower than that, probably around 8,800. And from a monthly Joule perspective, while I don't necessarily think that the monthly Joule has enough history for myself to feel comfortable with it, a lot of people are going to consider this as a halter long signal with the light blue oscillator bouncing off the pink, which again, that's a personal thing. I wouldn't necessarily take it myself, but for the more cavalier people out there, probably fine. Or at least, if you can manage risk on it, all good. And in this case, I think that you have a pretty obvious risk management point, basically at the low point of this monthly dildo, which right now is about 8,900 even, which is also a very good, just massive marker in the same area that we've been looking at to be demonstrative of the next major move to the downside. If Bitcoin does break that, just trades below it on doesn't matter what fucking time frame, at any point this month, as that would destroy our higher low structure and make this basically an ascending triangle that breaks out to the downside, which is pretty fucking bearish to be fair, and initiate moves very likely into the mid 7,000s. That's actually the measure move right here, also synonymous with the 0.5 fib and also synonymous with our historical horizontal here. And personally speaking, while I do think that area could reverse it, I'd really be looking for a potential bottom at around 6,900 if Bitcoin were to again break below the current low at 8,900 or close a daily dildo below this rising support trend line, which is currently coming in around 90.50, we'll call it, and rising over time, of course. So for right now, the daily is kind of taking over and looking pretty damn good. And I believe that we closed a 2-day last night as well. Yes, indeed, we did. And the same thing goes here as well. In fact, I think that the 2 day is just a more orderly chart and gets things better in general. And I would say essentially the same thing about the 2 day that I would say about the daily on CMEs. As long as Bitcoin's close in 2-day dildos above the 10 simple right here at 95.50ish region, I look for the path of least resistance to once again tap into the blue box of peace and prosperity. And this is all coming along the side of the fact that, hey, get off all these trend lines. Jesus Christ, man. It's too many. It's obviously, correlated with different time frames here, so it's not really relevant to the 2 day. But what we're going to see here, assuming that Bitcoin does confirm another 2-day little closure, especially above 9,600, we will see 2-day Stokes cross back up to the upside, or actually even above 95.25 according to the reverse Stoke indicator cross, which is also going to imply a rejection of the bearish control zone, which would be a bullish reset and then very likely give us some momentum to, well, if Bitcoin is going to break above 10,000, well, that would be the time to do it. Then the areas of interest would be 10,500, the last prior high, then 11,000/11,100 and 11,500 correlated with the macro to the upside. And this is all coming along the signature on the historical volatility percentile that we see for both the daily and the 2 day of a very much contracted signature here, which suggests that the next expansion phase is going to be massive, absolutely fucking massive, because we've just never seen anything this aggressive on a daily for this long as far as historical volatility percentile goes. Bitcoin has been at a 1 and at most 2 read on historical volatility percentile for almost 2 weeks straight now, going back to June 11th, which, to put this into perspective, the only times that we've had anything remotely similar to what we're looking at right now, which again is not actually, which right now we're actually seeing even more so of an outlier outlier was September 2019. That was precipitating about a 50% dump from 10,500, or sorry, hold on. Hey, where are you? Well, technically speaking, you could say 50% down here to 4,400, but realistically, I'd say that the 40% retracement to about 6,000 is a little bit more relevant to that price point. Was precipitated upon the last one. The time before that we had something even remotely resembling what we're looking at right now, which wasn't even as aggressive, was on the switch up from bear to bull in March 2019, going all the way from 4,000 to 14,000 a few months later. Time before that, we produced a 50% drop from 6,000 down to 3,000 right here. So, another interesting one. And funnily enough, the low volatility reads typically do lead to the downside. Doesn't mean that it's always going to happen in directions not implied by volatility. Although typically in traditional markets, it does, high volatility implies downside, whereas low volatility implies upside, which means that when you get to super low reads on volatility, well, the next move is typically to the typically to the downside, as the only way that it can really go is up, as that's how it's kind of programmed. In 2016 bull market, we had this signature right here. Again, not nearly as aggressive as what we're seeing, but this did precipitate the next massive rally all the way from $420 to, it's like, where do you pick your top here? There's not really a good one to be quite honest with you. Again, right here, not as aggressive as what we're seeing right now, but just to put things into perspective, that did precipitate a pretty nice move to the upside as well. So overall, if Bitcoin does break to the upside, I do really think that it would be relevant to say that Bitcoin would very likely test the macro area. And if Bitcoin is going to break the macro area, well, that would be a damn good time to do it. It does have a lot of things in its favor as far as that goes. But still, at the end of the day, price action trumps all. And if I don't see price action break the relevant levels that we've spoken about, this is all just fucking mental masturbation, which is great. It's great for blue brains, but it's not great for trading, because at the end of the day, it needs to be actionable. And for myself as a trader, the only actionable thing is what you're marked off of, which is price action. So these can help form biases and everything, but for myself, I want to be very deliberately clear with this. Price action is first and foremost, as it always is for myself. Looking at the 12-hour, do we see anything interesting here? We see 12-hour still headed upwards and north, and that is going to remain to the upside as long as Bitcoin is closing 12-hour dollars above 95.50-ish regions. So that pivot is further solidified on not just the 2-day, but also the 12-hour and the daily by extension as well. So as long as Bitcoin is above there, it's still short-term, medium-term, pulling in that bullish nature. And we do see a very interesting read on historic volatility percentile on the 12-hour as well. Yes, it is still overall contracting, but this is winding up for a much more long-term breakout, it looks like. Actually, I think it's better represented by the daily, which, by the way, the daily has this contraction phase going all the way back to early March on the 4,400 low right here, or sorry, on the 4,400 low in early March, which does imply that we are going to be playing out something like this overall, as 3 touches does make a trend, and you could say that we pretty much have 3 touches. That is more of a regression here than anything else. The thing is that it would say hold your horses before getting super excited about any sort of like major, massive but macro breakout or breakdown, and that would correlate to the upside again above 11,500 or to the downside below 6,900. That's when things really start to look abysmal for the macro, not to be confused with the long term. And it would suggest that the next move comes into its either relative high or low if and when we see the historical volatility percentile on this hit somewhere around this trend line in a lower high fashion that we saw right here in early June, actually. And looking at the moving average on the historical volatility percentile for the daily right here, you can see that it's very aggressively angled to the downside. And when you do get that very aggressive angling to the downside, it is suggesting that a move is coming sooner rather than later. But it also suggests that move is going to be within the context of the greater whole as far as this contraction phase goes. And as far as this phase goes, we're building up a major, massive case, likely for the macro, if I had to guess, which is likely to be resolved somewhere around here, maybe August, September, October area of this year. So again, I do think that while Bitcoin is moving here and showing some signs of life and overall good, still has a lot of work to do from the macro perspective. So there's still that to be aware of as well. Let's go back to CMEs. I'm curious if there's anything else that's of interest here. Of course, historic volatility percentile on CMEs is very, 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 very contracted as well. I think that we had hidden bullish divergence on the 3-day that we were speaking about yesterday. That was also an interesting thing because we did say that if Bitcoin took out the 95.50 high, which to be fair was only like a $50 difference between the other trigger that I was looking for at 9,600 essentially, then this would be confirmed as a higher low. And if this is a higher low, then that means that this is slightly but definitely present hidden bullish divergence between this point, well, this point, and this point, as these are all higher lows here, correlated with lower lows on RSI. So I do think that we still probably test the top side of this range, but keep in mind, look at where the 3-day momentum changes. It will change back up to the upside above $10,000. So that means, that really provides clarity to the $10,000 region as that next triggering area for a resolution of this as an ascending triangle to the upside, really initiating not just a move towards 10,500, but really 11,000 overall. And then we'll come back and kind of see that one in real time. This is also playing incredibly well with traditional markets, of which that was the biggest thing kind of forming my bias coming into yesterday, saying that, hey, traditional markets, they're bullish. This is fucking bullish, man. We got the pullback before the real trading day even began, all the way to 98.50, as we spoke about coming in over the weekend, and the reaction was phenomenal. And what do we have? New all-time highs, just as we said. And I'm not saying this to sound arrogant, but just to follow up for the people who happen to give a fuck and who spend the time, really digesting these videos. I do want to make sure that I do, the best job that I possibly can for those people, because you're a fucking TA nerd just like I am, and someone was silly enough to take the time to teach me when I was first beginning, and so I feel like it's good to kind of pass it on, especially at this point in the video. It's already 20 minutes in, so according to statistics, like 80% of people have already clicked off this video, so we can now speak to the TA nerds. So yeah, we have new all-time highs on NASDAQ, exactly as we spoke about. Again, keep in mind, monthly is going to be closing soon, and any sort of a monthly close above 99.50 is going to likely continue on to new all-time highs coming into the month of, what's the month after June? July. That's right. I don't think that this one's done just yet. Remember that we do have yes, that's right. We have an inverted head and shoulders coming in from the daily weekly right here, with your left shoulder in early March, head in late March, right shoulder in right shoulder in like late April, actually mid to late April, and that does have a measure move actually much higher. In fact, I believe towards 11,000. So I don't really have any real reason to look for that to not happen at this point in time. I mean, it's kind of like in price discovery once again. There are going to be areas of interest here. The one spot 272 fib extension actually at 10,600. Then the one spot 414 at 11,000, which funnily enough does equate to the measure move on this one that we've had in there for the long term incredibly well. So what I can say now is that as long as this one's closing weeklies above 9,800 and especially even 9,850, which we already tested and had a phenomenal reaction off of early this week. I mean, literally before the traditional markets even opened for New York Open. I mean, it's looking good, and I would not get bearish on this thing at all whatsoever, as long as it's above that pivot point, especially above even 9,800-ish region at this point in time. From a major moving average perspective, all major moving averages are in a bullish posturing plus upwardsly sloped, and same thing with Bitcoin as well. In fact, as you can see right here, you can see that the 10 simple leads the 21, the 21 leads and diverges from the 55. Same thing between the 89 and the 200, and the 200 simple is not really included in this because it's of a different nature. Technically the 10 simple would be as well, but it's going to be basically synonymous with the 9 exponential. So if you're trying to follow along, understand that these things are more or less interchangeable in a lot of ways, not in every way, but in some ways. In the way that I'm using them right now, they are. So looking at this right here, Bitcoin from a historical standpoint on the weekly loves to play off of, especially these moving averages. In fact, as we'll actually nail it down to exactly just this, but the 10 simple, the 21 exponential moving average, and the weekly 55, the red, yellow, and green respectively. And you can see from a historical standpoint that anytime Bitcoin's even just above the yellow 21 exponential moving average and using it to bounce along, that's your bull markets. And as long as it does not get a negative slope, you're still carrying out that trend. And that also means, by contrast, when it does get a negative slope right here, well, party's over. And guess what? Party's over on this bull trap right here. And it's not till it gets a neutral and then slightly positive slope when the market actually turns around in 2015 right here. And then again, that keeps you long the whole way throughout this move from $250 to $20,000, even though Bitcoin does have several 50% or 40% dumps in between there. The slope of the 21 exponential moving average remains to the upside the whole way through. And then guess when it changes on the, on that second major rejection at 11,500 in February 2018, and tells you to stay short all the way until 4,300 right here about a year later. So again, very, 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 very interesting stuff. As overall Bitcoin, has been playing off of it, and then more importantly, we're seeing all of the lower periods in relationship to their higher period moving averages on the weekly and the other higher term timeframes gain more and more divergence away from each other, and they will naturally do that, especially as long as the 3-day kind of holds this higher low trajectory. So things are looking decent once again for Bitcoin. And if Bitcoin does fail back down below 95.50, I will, you'll see me essentially adopt the same stance as I was adopting earlier this week. It's like, obviously the probabilities of breaking to the downside are going to be higher when you're closer to a downside resolution. So right now, the opposite's true to the upside. And in fact, we can look at what's it called, probabilities with regards to that right now. So no longer do we need an upward, can finally change this. Holy shit, man, this is great. So I'm going to make this to 10,000 just to be more conservative. I actually do think that 9,900 on especially a 12-hour or daily closure probably does it. Even a 4-hour probably does it as well. But I want to keep things consistent here. To the downside, I'm going to use 9,500. Yes, technically it is 9,550, but because we're going to be using a daily here, and because it's already relatively close as well, I want to see what that's going to look like. And this is very interesting. This is actually a little bit sombering as well. We do see that the above target probability is 23.60%, which is relatively high. Now, obviously, the downside target probability is a lot higher at 35.33%. But here's the thing: remember, the upside target probability correlates with the long term, spinning off likely at least another $500 move, likely another $1,000 move, potentially a macro change of behavior if it gets back above 11,500. To the downside, this only correlates with the short term move. If Bitcoin loses 9,500 again, I would be looking for extension to the downside of the range, and probably at that point, this is going to fall apart as an ascending triangle. I think that we're kind of running out of room here, and when thinking about the next resolution or the next test, we probably get the resolution. So while it would imply a test of the downside of the range, probably somewhere around like 90.50 or 9,100, probably another small anemic bounce there, and then an actual break to the downside, and then we can play out the downside targets that we spoke about. But for right now, obviously, the upside target probability is going to be for the long term is going to be a lot higher than the downside, which I'll even use that like 9,100 just out of curiosity. Yeah, it's going to be 23.60 versus 9 3/4 essentially. For a 12-hour, let's see what this would look like as well. So this correlates with the next 12-hour close, by the way. And at 10,000, it looks like 16% was that. And then let's also use 95 again. 16%, which is actually decently high. The below target probability is 27.5%, which is obviously higher. So that's as it stands, technically speaking. If Bitcoin were to break back down below that level and close below there, especially on some of the time frames that actually matter a little bit, even a 4-hour probably does it. It's just I'm not really bearish as long as we're above that level, 9,500 again, or sorry, 9,550. As far as momentum goes, BA and Pigs BA, fucking, how can I not call Bali? Hey Bali, what's up, man? Bali and Pigs moms are still pointed north. They're still erect on both the 12-hour and just beginning on the daily, of which I am very interested to see how this one kind of evolves over time, as I've really been paying a lot more attention to this more recently, but I still don't feel like I have I still don't feel like this one operates in the same way that you'd expect divergences and convergences to work on your traditional momentum oscillators. So maybe there's something that I'm missing. There's probably something that I'm missing. That's probably the better stance to take. but I feel like there's something there, but I just haven't found it yet. Or maybe I'm trying to find Jesus toast in this bitch. Well, fair enough. There's probably a lot of that going on. Anyways, let's go check out Mr. Buterol. Yes, Mr. Buterol. Very, 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 very nice chart right here. As I think it was a 3-day. Yeah, the 3-day closing above all major moving averages, using the 10 symbol to rally off of. I just need to see a daily closure above about 250, and I'll target a move towards 275 to 85 region. Back up here looks good, and I'd imagine that's gonna be most cryptos in the space. Even Litecoin. Well, this is what relative weakness looks like. I mean, Jesus Christ, this looks like absolute dog shit. This is still problematic to me. I mean, it's still. Listen, if I was just looking at Litecoin, I'd say, yeah, this chart's absolute garbage, just terrible, and probably going to fucking back down to lows below $30 and maybe even lower. But because Bitcoin runs the market, and to somewhat of an extension, Mr. Buterol right now as well, if those continue to test some upside, do I think that Litecoin is going to break down? No, I don't. They typically set the direction, and then Litecoin will follow, and that's going to go for most altcoins. We can actually even look at Link right now too. This might be a good time to check in on how good old Link Marines are doing on Binance. And what do we see? Yeah, looking very good here. I believe that we actually did say that that Link was going to head back up to $4.50 at the end of last week, and that's where we are right now. This one's looking like it's actually primed for a legitimate breakout to new all-time highs on the dollar pairing. I actually really like this chart right here. This is a very, 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 very good chart. If it does get a daily closure above 475, that would constitute a break on the daily or just a weekly close above, I think it was $4.50, as I just said. New all-time highs very likely in coming after that. Daily looks very healthy here. Daily, I mean, it's still probably one of the best charts in cryptocurrency land for the last 3 years. Very impressive. Very, 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 very impressive. Let's look at E-mini futures for SPY at 315 once again. Sorry, 311 and a half to be exact. I'd be looking for a retest of 322, 323 region, and overall probably sets it up for a nice for a nice run anywhere above 2 weeks ago high at 323, and I'd be looking for extension to the 333 gap right there, and probably new all-time highs to come after that. So, as we said, last week was the opportunity. We said in June that somewhere near the end of June or even July, looking for a big pullback to scare the shit out of everyone, and then that's going to be a big opportunity. And I believe that's what we saw right there. And there's really no reason to be bearish on E-mini futures as long as it's above 3,000, and on NASDAQ, more importantly, as long as it's above 9,800. So I would really use that for direction right now, because they seem to be the ones to kind of allow the rest of the market, the world market, essentially Bitcoin included, to kind of rally up. So if Bitcoin is going to get a chance to break to the upside here, I'd really look for NASDAQ to make new all-time highs and continue to make new all-time highs into this next month of July, actually. Looking at Microsoft, $200 even, as we said, a nice round even target, and looking like it's going to just continue on from here. I don't really see any reason for it to really stop. Do have that same sort of inverted head and shoulders that you see on NASDAQ. Funnily enough, it would make sense because, well, guess what? Oh, we've already hit the target on it. So what do you do after that? There's not really too much to do. An object in motion tends to stay in motion, is what my mentor used to say, and I don't really have any real targets for this to be made. All I'd be doing is looking for divergence plays on like a daily to kind of be demonstrative of the next medium and potentially long-term top. But for right now, it's continuation, and it's looking damn good, and I'd be looking for new all-time highs. I don't have any real targets here. I'm just looking higher. Apple, probably same shit. Yep, same shit. Exact same shit. And guess what? NASDAQ is being mostly held up by, or mostly led by Microsoft and Apple. So looking pretty damn good there as well. And I think that this is also, if you do want to make a relationship to fundamentals, which do matter, it's just the problem is that most people don't even understand like what a fundamental is. But the Fed printing off more money and essentially airdropping it into Americans' bank accounts probably going to help that situation out a little bit as well. Anyways, I think I've covered just about everything that I want to speak about today. Let's go back to Bitcoin. Let's go down to the lower term time frames And let's make sure that I'm actually recording them. My microphone's working as well, because that'd be a shame for this whole video to be worth nothing. Okay, it is. That's good. checking it 33 minutes inside the video. So yeah, as long as Bitcoin's above 95.50 on a 4-hour closure, I'm still short-term, medium-term, angled towards the upside, looking for the $9,900 to $10,000 region to get tapped into here, with any sort of a 12-hour or daily closure above 9,900 on a more aggressive estimate, or 10,000 on a more conservative estimate, or, and I actually do think that this probably would work as well, a 4-hour closure above 9,900 likely do resolve this ascending triangle to the upside, which would then imply a move towards 11,100. Actually, I would put particular interest on these pivots right here for short-term stops, somewhere right around. Let's see. Let's get this one right. All right. So that's a nice little area right there. That's a nice little area right there. Actually, that's a nice little area in general. 10,350 to 10,400. So nice $50 range there. Probably a short-term pullback from that region, and then you'd probably want to see like 10,000 get retested again. And if that retest holds up, then I'd be looking for extension to those upwards targets. By the same token, if Bitcoin does break back down below 95.50, I'd look for a nice extension to the downside of the short-term range, which is actually 92.50. Probably a small bounce there, and then set up for a test to our rise and support trend line, at which point I'd probably look for another short-term bounce off this region. But testing this region, so many times as the volatility is massively contracted, suggesting that we are going to see a massive move soon, does really make you think, well, the same thing as what I'm thinking right here. Well, we're closer to supports now, and things are very mature. So if this thing does break, it's going to be a massive flooding of price to the downside to those targets that we spoke about earlier. So for right now, still looking good. Actually didn't even check out momentum oscillators on the 4-hour here. Here's something to consider though. If you do want something bearish in the short term, there is actually something mounting up right now. We do have hidden bearish divergence very much potentially present between this point going all the way back to 1st of June to where we are right now, as Bitcoin was on a massively higher high right here, but a massively higher high RSI reading in the more present times, correlated with this one right here. Almost 300 difference between these two guys. Or sorry, is it 300 or 200? Sorry, $200 difference between them, which on a 4-hour is significant. So Bitcoin does confirm this as a local high, which I essentially am looking at that if Bitcoin does break back down below 95.50, especially on a 2-hour or 4-hour closure, then I look for extension, another $300 to the downside of this range right here. And that's not going to look all that hot. And keep in mind that 4-hour Stokes are going to be crossing down here and will remain to the downside as long as we're closing 4-hour dildos below 97.50. So short term does actually need to get picked up sooner rather than later in order for this to continue to look good, in the more immediate perspective of it. Otherwise, I'd look for some sideways if BULAs are going to take control, and then a test up to the top side blue box. Same thing with the 3-hour. I'm curious if the 2-hour is the same area. Yeah, it does. In hourly, all head in the same direction. So if Bitcoin is going to get a little bit of a fake out here, I would keep an intentful eye on 95.50ish. Other than that, though, I'd like to wish you well once again. Take care, and until next time.